beautiful thing when the fields of snow are glimmering. And I know it's a beautiful thing when the sunshine brings the warmth of spring to me again. And I find true beauty when the sky turns yellow and the sunflowers open their eyes, so beautiful and bright. And I find true beauty in the morning time when the sunflowers in your eyes are open wide. Open up your eyes wide. Open your eyes. This life is a beautiful thing when the summer heat is softened by a breeze, by a breeze. And I know it's a beautiful thing when the orange leaves of the autumn take a leap down from the trees. And I find true beauty when the sky turns yellow and the sunflowers open their eyes, so beautiful and bright. And I find true beauty in the morning time when the sunflowers in your eyes are open wide. Open up your eyes wide. Open up your eyes so wide. True beauty when the sky turns yellow and the sunflowers open their eyes, so beautiful and bright. And I find true beauty in the morning time when the sunflowers in your eyes are open wide. Open up your eyes wide. Open up your eyes so wide.
Oh yeah, that's us. That's our music. That's it, bro. I don't know, man.
We're just gonna pretend that we're playing up here.
Ooh,
Good Morning Action Church.
hey. I can't see you now.
Yeah, it says Matt Wheeler, in the, but you'll notice that there is not only Matt Wheeler on the stage. Give me a hand for Buddy Hart. He's going to be a special guest on this one.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we played the same festival, an outdoor festival yesterday, and so that was kind of our practice to run
Yeah.
things. This is a song about how every person has value. Every person is made in the image of God, so they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and that we need each other. So I'll let the song do the rest of the talking, but here we go. This is called Harbor.
Brother and my sister, my neighbor and my friend, like lilies and sparrows with no need to pretend. Father above looks down with love on every child he has made. So who are we to disagree, to tear down and to break, and to break? I will be your harbor, can be my refuge. Grace and love from our God above. You can lean on me, and I will lean on you.
We are brushstrokes on his canvas, colorful and bright. Soldiers fighting battles, raging on inside. The least of these is like you and me, the rich and poor alike. But who are we to disagree? Let mercy be our light, be our light. I will be your harbor. You can be my refuge. With grace and love from the God above. Oh, you can lean on me, and I will lean on you.
Lean on me, and I will lean on you.
Buddy Hart, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Action Church's own Buddy Hart. It's always a pleasure. Yeah. All the leaning on. Be sure that in this season that is on. It's metaphorical. Like, be safe with the people that live in the same house with you. Then by all means, lean on them. That's fine. If they do not have a certain virus that should not be named right now. Anyway, so my name is Matt Wheeler. If you've been here for any length of time, you've probably seen me before. But this next one is called That Violet Dark, which, when I record it months from now, well, next month, it might have a different title, but that's what it's called right now. It's based on the book The Little Prince. But this is one of the few songs that I've had a chance to write a few songs during this time where I've been home a lot more and gigging less. And so this one is about how the important things in life are often the things you can't see, like relationships, like joy, like faith. So here we go. I'll do the song. Let the song do the rest of the talking. This is called That Violet Dark. Let me double check my tuning. Got unusual tuning for this one too. That's pretty close. All right. It's long there. Sorry, guys. All right, here we go.
Silent stars stand watch tonight. It's like the night you crashed down, cut by the beauty of a jagged soul, the questions you could do without. Eyes are blind to the matters of the heart, to the most important part. Essential is invisible, lights up a million stars, like falling sparks against that violet dark. that violet dark, violet dark, the country of tears, my friends. There's no place to make a home. Hitch a ride with the wild birds, with the questions you never could let go. The eyes are blind to the matters of the heart, to the most important parts. Essential is invisible, lights up a million stars, like starling sparks against that violet dark, violet dark, that violet dark. Eyes are blind to the matters of the heart, to the most important parts. Essential is invisible, lights up a million stars, like falling sparks against that violet dark, that violet dark. Violet dark.
Thank you, guys. All right. So that last one I played for the first time for an audience yesterday, and today this is the first time I played this for anyone besides, like, my wife heard it when I was from upstairs when I was recording it. It's a demo version. Maybe I'll go ahead and do a read tune on this. So this one, the next project that I'm recording, everything is based on a, let's try to get back to regular tuning here. Everything's based on a classic story. So the first one was based off of The Little Prince. There's other ones based off, like, The Horse and His Boy from the Chronicles of Narnia. Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. That one's not really a kid's book, but nonetheless, it's a wonderful story. So, wonderful book, I should say. So anyway, this one is based on The Hobbit, which, a fun fact about The Hobbit, how many of you ever read The Hobbit before? There's a series of movies. I don't know how they made 3 movies on the book, because it's a really great book, but it's not hugely long. So anyway, the full title of the book that Tolkien gave it is The Hobbit, or, There and Back Again. And there's a number of there's a number of songs in the book that Tolkien wrote, where they're actually, like full on, like, they look like poems because you're just reading them. But so I borrowed heavily from the song that Bilbo sings when he's coming back home. Whoops, that's right. That's going to B. And then up to E for this one. So anyway, this one is called Little Bird, or There and Back Again. A little nod to its source. Okay. And here we go. Thanks for being the guinea pigs for the very first time I played this publicly. And that's not it, too. All right, so. Try one more time. Here. Oh, that's the problem. That would do it. Okay. Yeah, I've had so much time and goof around with other tunings, and that's still not tuned. That's for closer. Thank you for bearing with me. This is a really exciting part of the performance, I know. For all you tuning enthusiasts. All right. That's way closer. All right, so we'll go with this. This is called Little Bird.
Little bird, will you sing a sweet June hymn for me? Let me tell you all the wondrous things these eyes have seen. Little bird, I've traveled long under cloud and under star. May just be the one who saves us all. Who saves us all. There and back again. The road winds ever, ever on by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown. There and back again. These feet are wandering, have gone, now turned at last to home. Oh, I'm not who I was. Oh, I'm not who I was. Little bird, we've inked a path across this map, running river, fire and cold, now to home at last. Little bird, this membership I never thought to see, shown me what it takes and what I was meant to be. What I was meant to be. There and back again. Road winds ever, ever on by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown. There and back again. These feet are wandering, have gone, now turned at last to home. Oh, I'm not who I was. Oh, I'm not who I was. Oh, I'm not who I was.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey guys, welcome to Action Church. My name is Mitch, and I have a couple of announcements for you. I'm actually really excited because August has a lot of things going on. To start off, on August 9th, Sunday, August 9th, it's Ladies' Night at 6:30, and that's going to be at Rachel Shear's house. So yep, Rachel's right there. The ladies gather, they talk, and they have food. Sometimes it's at my house, so I kind of know what's going on, but like when I walk in the room, they get real quiet, so I'm not completely sure what's going on. No, but they have a lot of fun. It's a great way to connect with other people who, are going through similar circumstances. So similarly, on Tuesday, August 11th is Dudes Day, second Tuesday, Dudes Day. Okay, let's not make it a competition, but it is pretty awesome. And that's here at Action Church in the building. Tons of room for activities. So we'll be hanging out here. Again, there'll be food, there'll be dudes. We'll go deep, but not too deep to make you uncomfortable. You know what I mean? We'll try to walk that tightrope. It's a good time, I promise. Sunday, August 16th is Youth Night, so the youth get their own night as well. Okay, yep, now it is a competition. All right, so that's junior and senior high, grades 6 to 12. They hang out. Again, there's food because it's Action Church. There's got to be food. And then, they do usually a Bible study that's kind of follows what we're doing here, and allowing our youths to give their perspective. I've had the privilege of sitting in on that many times. It's very insightful. But if you're out of 12th grade or over, you're not invited, so you'll never know. So that's 6 to 12. And then Sunday, August 23rd, huge, big, giant deal, church picnic. So on the 23rd, we're going to be at John C. Rudy Park. We're going to have sign-up sheets the next 2 weeks for set up, tear down, different things. We're going to get the food catered in, so we don't have to worry about that as much. And then one thing that I want to emphasize is that this is an awesome opportunity for inviting people, especially people who, during the COVID world that we live in, where people have kind of backed away from stuff. This is a great, safe outdoor event. Obviously don't put any pressure on people, but this is a great time to invite people who maybe, kind of disappeared during this whole season. So let's try to bring as many people in. Let's have a good time, and just be a community together on Sunday, August 23rd. Every week we talk about inviting, investing, and getting involved. So you know the deal. You have to invite people in order for this to happen. You have to invest your time and money, because if you don't, it doesn't happen, and you have to get involved. So I just ask you to do that. This week we're talking we're starting a new series called Facing the Heat. It's about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those, I don't know why we don't name our kids awesome names like that anymore, but, 3 guys who literally got thrown into a furnace. So, should be great, perfect for August. Pastor Don.
Wow, typical church talk. He has 3 sons, and they're not named Shadrach, Meshach. Put your money where your mouth is, Mitch, is what I'm saying. Hey, I was thinking, though, setting out there, that I'm in this room basically twice a week, and, Sunday morning I'm here talking to you or sitting out there listening. And on Wednesday night, we clear the chairs and tables out, and it gets really sweaty in here because we're doing a Taekwondo class. And I was thinking this felt a little more like Wednesday than Sunday because a different uniform. I don't wear this then. But since we came back to live classes in martial arts after, the break from COVID, it seemed a little more real because, we're watching all sort of the violence on TV and YouTube and seeing people get knocked down and jacked in the street, and you kind of go, oh, it's always important to know how to defend yourself, but all of a sudden it seemed like, I might tell someone something that could save their life, and so it took it and didn't get too heavy. But one thing that we kept doing on Wednesday night is we've been learning how to get up off the ground. And I know that seems like, yeah, everybody can get up off the ground. Yes, you can, but can you get up off the ground if someone has knocked you down and is hitting you or kicking you, and can you get away from them? And so we started teaching that every week on Wednesday night because most of us go, yeah, we can get up. If we were knocked down, we could, I get knocked down, I get up again. You never, Chumbawamba taught us that. Like, we know how to do that, but, at a certain point in our life, like, kids spring back up, but, I don't know what age it hits you, but after a while, like, if you're literally laying on the floor in front of the TV, there's that, you got to roll over and sort of like sway around like a cow and like fart twice, and that's just me, but like make loud noises and groaning, and then like 2 months later you're actually standing back up and you're exhausted. Well, that doesn't work very well when you're getting hit. So we started teaching people, how to spring back up and to get back and get out of the way. And the reason why is it was like, I don't want anybody in our class to not know how to get back up if they've been knocked down. And I have sort of the same feeling with you guys this morning and everybody out there in the streaming world as well. If you're watching this, like, I hope you don't have to use this. I hope that all of your lives are perfect and you never have to face, sort of the heat of the mob, But if you do, it's so great that we have this training from the Bible. And sort of like the training we have on Wednesday night, the reason why we do it over and over is you can't just tell someone how to get up correctly. They have to do it again and again and again so it becomes the way they get up. And so I want to sort of do that same thing this morning and hopefully over the next 3 weeks, that as you can sort of get in your heart and in your mind and in your way of dealing with the heat, that when it comes, like maybe you'll already have this training and you'll already be ready, because I don't want any of you to face that without that. So we're going to do that for the next 3 weeks. We're going to talk about standing up and sort of giving in, and giving up. And it's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to do. And I want to tell you that it's not a team sport, and that's what makes it difficult, because as Americans, we're pretty good with teams, right? Like, we don't even mind being hated if, like, have a team. Like, we all hate Mitch because he likes the Cowboys, and I don't even care about footballs. I just Mitch. But like, here's the thing, like, we're fine with that. He's fine with that because he has a team. But the thing about facing the heat that we're going to talk about, when you face the heat, it'll probably be alone. Now, you don't have to do it alone. Like, you can have support. You can have people who are praying for you. You can have people who are on your side. But just like learning how to deal with being knocked down in the street by some person you don't know and getting stomped, like, you're probably not going to have your team of friends around you. You're probably not going to have everyone around you. So we have to learn this individually and yet support each other as much as we can. And that's why I think the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is so valuable. And it's so interesting because it sort of perfectly encapsulates this idea. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a couple stories this morning, and we're not going to make it all the way through the story. But it's a good one. So we're going to spend some time, and I think you might notice some things in it that remind you of today, that people haven't changed that much. You know, even though we're talking about three guys getting thrown in a furnace, you go, oh, people seem a lot alike. So let's start out, and we're going to be in Daniel chapter 3 all month. And it says this. It says, King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. And he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And he sent messages to the high officers, the officials, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judge, the magistrates, let's cover all bases, and the local dog catcher, and all the provincial officials to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. It says, so all the officials came, and they stood before the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, we don't really know what the statue is. Legend, and we probably think it was him because he seems to be that kind of guy. And it says, then a herald shouted out, people of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, he loves lists too. The horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipe, the band, and other musical instruments, bow to the ground and worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Now, he played a song from The Hobbit earlier. It feels like this is, you know, could be a movie, but I just want to remind you that, like, Nebuchadnezzar is a real guy. Can we go back to that slide? I jumped ahead. I'm sorry. Nebuchadnezzar is a real guy that really lived. In fact, these are some writings. And the big cylinder you see is how they kept record. Like, that was their floppy disk of their age, I guess. Or this is their hard drive. They would press, these instruments into soft clay, and then they would fire it. And it was actually pretty successful because thousands later we still have them and we are still translating them. Here's one of the translations. I, Nebuchadnezzar, laid the foundation of the gates down to the ground water level and had them built out of pure blue stone. That's what's written on this wall we see, the blue wall. And upon the walls in the inner room of the gate are bulls and dragons, and thus I magnificently adorned them with luxurious splendor for all mankind to behold. It is huge. I mean, it's like, we know that Nebuchadnezzar is a real guy. And this is a real story, and Babylon is a real place. In fact, if you want to visit, I have directions. It's 55 beautiful Predator drone-filled miles away from Baghdad, Iraq. You can go. It's a but it's a real place. There are actually ruins that they are excavating from the amazing. Babylon, I believe, was the first that we know history of over 2,000 people. It's 2,000 people in the very small. It functions is incredible. In fact, that's why Babylon, the city built by King Nebuchadnezzar, was one of the 7 wonders of the world. I mean, it's just amazing to think that this is a story written about a person that is clearly part of history. And I want you to notice this part, it's like, he says, people of all races and nations and tongues, and you go, oh, nice, it's very diverse there in Babylon. Yes, it is, very diverse place to live because he goes to all lands and captures them, enslaves them, and brings them back to Babylon. He actually had a pretty successful diversity program and built Babylon based on this idea, you hear diversity is our strength. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar believed that. In fact, he went to every land he could conquer and sort of went through the ranks and said, who's the smartest guy in the room? Who are the best officials? Who are the greatest craftsmen? Who are the smartest people and the most accomplished people in the whole land? And then he would just take them back to Babylon. And in fact, the characters of our story, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, are actually victims of that very thing. There were some, very intelligent, very accomplished young men, and we'll talk about this next week, in Jerusalem. And when Nebuchadnezzar comes and knocks down their country and takes it over and takes them back to Babylon, that's how they became part of this story. And I also want you to notice it says, that anyone who refuses to obey will be immediately thrown into a fiery furnace. I like to think of King Nebuchadnezzar, mostly peaceful Nebuchadnezzar. Let's just say that, because he's like a guy who builds amazing buildings. He's known for the Hanging Gardens of Babylon artwork, but there's a really dark and violent side to Nebuchadnezzar. So on one hand, you have this guy who's so educated and so accomplished, and hey, I've built the largest statue in the world, and we've plated it in gold, and that seems absolutely in character of the Nebuchadnezzar we know from history. But it's also absolutely in character that, and by the way, if you don't fully appreciate it in the way I would like you to, you'll be killed and thrown into the fiery furnace. And so basically, remember this. There are two simple steps to avoid the fiery furnace. You hear the music, you bow down. Both of those are very important, and we'll be talking about that during this time, because simple instructions, but let's just say that Nebuchadnezzar was not afraid to use violence, and so the story goes on. So it says, so at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race or nation or language, and the reason why they keep saying that is because this is a very unique gathering that somehow King Nebuchadnezzar has been able, just through the force of his will and his power and fear, has been able to bring all of these accomplished, brilliant people from all these lands. And really, we're talking about enslaving them, kidnapping them. But then he also sort of makes them officials in his, so it's like a hostile takeover, literally. He goes to the other countries, and he brings their smartest, best people back, and somehow, through terror and the force of his will, goes, now you're part of Babylon. And so that's why it keeps saying, all the people of all the different, these are people from all over the world, and they bowed to the ground. And they worshiped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. But some of the astrologers went to the king and informed on the Jews. And they said to King Nebuchadnezzar, long live the king. You issued a decree requiring all the people to bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the band. And the decree also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. Once again, notice they're officials. They're actually in charge. And they pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods, and they do not worship the gold statue you've set up. So it says that all the people. So imagine this scene. We don't know how many people, but we know that Babylon historically is a very, very large metropolitan area. I'm imagining this sort of like the Avengers scene with Loki. I think it's a lot like that. You will bow. And so, by the way, Loki, best Avenger. Not really an Avenger, but best villain, I'll say. I miss him greatly. Spoiler alert. But here's the thing, that's that kind of scene. And that's probably way smaller. We're probably talking about thousands, maybe tens of thousands in this giant open area. And here's how we know sort of it's large enough that the king up on his reviewing stand doesn't even notice the 3 people standing up. And so everybody kneels down. I bet they did, right? Like, because if you think about it, and this is something important to remember as we sort of get into this idea of facing the heat. Like, there's very little downside to bowing, right? Like, everybody's bowing. It's not like, oh, well, I look like a sucker if I bow. No, everybody's bowing. People of all nations, all races, all languages, powerful people are bowing. And so it's not surprising that everybody bowed, right? There's very little downside. I'm going to wrinkle my pants. I might kneel on something, pointy. And there's huge upside, like not getting thrown into the furnace is big, right? Like, we don't want to be destroyed in the furnace. We'd like to avoid that. And then I was thinking about this, like, it says, but some of the astrologers went to the king and informed of the Jews. Now, isn't it interesting how people have not changed? Because, last week we talked about what does it matter to you? Jesus said that, how does that affect you? Like, really? 3 guys aren't kneeling down out of all of you, and you guys all bowed down, and notice what they did? They're like, we noticed these 3 guys. They didn't bow. Now, that's sort of good news, isn't it? Because at least we know people are paying attention. And this is so important for you and important for me to remember. See, we think when we're facing the heat like that, when we're taking a stand, that nobody notices, right? Like, nobody will probably notice if I do this thing, but the truth is people are paying attention. Now, the problem with that is that people are people. Like, this reminds me of today. Like, we see the, and I don't know how much of this is happening because our news and our news feeds on our phones are so screwed up in the fact they always point out the bad stuff. But like, we hear this all the time, like the mask enforcers and those people, like they're not happy enough. Like, they're bowing, they're cool, they're doing what the king said. But he's like, they go to the king and they say, you issued a decree requiring all the people. They're reminding him, guess what? And it was a great decree, King. We really love it. To bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of the band. I'm not going to read that again. And that decree also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into a blazing furnace. And doesn't that strike you that people are just people? Because that happens still, right? Like, somebody doesn't obey the decree of whatever it is. And most people do, but that's the one thing that's been sort of most shocking to me out of the last 6 months, let's say. Our world has changed so much and we don't even realize it. And one thing that's I didn't expect, I guess, is, I was raised in Missouri. It was snitches get stitches, but it seems like we're really willing as America. That sounds like I was raised in a prison. I was raised on a farm, but I had brothers and sisters, though. We stood by that. But it seems like we're really willing to snitch on each other, right? If somebody's not obeying the rules, somebody doesn't seem like they're, I was in a situation at work where I was actually, doing the right thing according to the decree of the governor. I was an essential worker, and somebody called and tried to get me to not work because I don't, and it was a competitor. But it's the same thing. Like, I realized, like, oh, people are people. People are people. So not only do they notice that these 3 Jewish boys aren't bowing down, what do? They go to the king and they remind the king, oh, by the way, king, this is a really great decree and we're totally with it. And these guys, they're not doing it. Now, little side note, and this doesn't really matter, but it is interesting, I think, because, like, I don't know if it was a year ago, we talked about the Magi at Christmas. These guys, the royal astrologers, the other word for them, Magi. Like the guys ratting out Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their lineage that they passed down, because of Daniel and because of Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego and what we're going to see later in this story, they're the 3 kings, not these same people, but they're distant ancestors, their distant children, great grandchildren, are the people that came looking for Jesus because they so much believed in the God of Israel. So bear in mind, like, you have no idea sort of what hangs in the balance of taking a stand. And we got to be careful. We're going to talk about this, like taking the right stand. Like, you've heard the phrase, we were talking about this earlier, like the hill to die on. Like, don't pick a dumb hill to die on, because there's a lot of things that aren't worth taking a stand. In fact, I'm glad we did the series we just did talking about pearls before swine, because I've seen over the years a lot of people take huge stands over things that don't really matter, and that's a terrible idea. But we're talking about this is the moment. This is the moment, and if I may quote Mr. Loaf, like, I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. Like, this is that moment. This is the moment where you go, no, I cannot bow in this situation. And that's what's happening with these 3 Jewish young men. They're very young men, probably in their 20s at this point. Now I want you to notice one more thing as we kind of move on in this story. But this is important. The story started talking about, like, I've built a statue, and I want everybody to bow to it, right? And, by the way, if you don't, I will totally throw you in the furnace. But it turns into something else. Because you know what it says here? It says, they refuse to serve your gods, and they do not worship the gold statue you set up. See, here's something I'm convinced of when it comes to facing the heat and why you and I need to be prepared as Christians. If you're a Christian this morning, this is so important. That sometimes the thing is not the thing. Like, this started out like, I'm just going to bow to a statue. What's a statue? A statue's nothing. It's a piece of metal. It's not a god. But you notice when they didn't bow, that everyone said, and we're going to see that King Nebuchadnezzar says the same thing. Wait a minute, you're not worshiping my God. See, there's something symbolic that's going on here, isn't there? And it's true in life. Like, there are times when you're going to have to make a stand for something. If you're a Christian, you're going to have to go, that is not something I can do as a follower of Christ. That's not something I can affirm as a follower of Christ. That's not something I can endorse. And everybody around you goes, oh, come on, man. Like, we're all doing this. It's fine. Like, it's not going to be you and your team against another team in this sense. And it's going to happen again and again, as you'll see in this story and in life. Like, it's you against everyone, it seems. But the thing is not the thing. Like, bowing to a piece of metal is nothing. Doesn't matter. But bowing when the king tells you to, it's symbolic that you worship what the king worships. You worship the king. You worship the gods of Babylon. And so the story continues. It says, then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage, and he ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. And when they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? And I think that gives you another idea of, like, the scale of this, because he really did not, he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. That you refuse to serve my gods or worship the gold statue I've set up. Once again, notice, he's saying, like, this is about worship. This is symbolic. This is not just bowing. I'll give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I've made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. And thank you for not listing them, Chad. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then he gets down to it. Because this is what it's always about in the end. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power. Here's the thing about this, and I think this is true today. When we refuse to bow, and I'm not talking just literally, but when we take a stand, when we face the heat, when we don't give up and give in, when we go, no, sorry, I can't do that. I can't say that. I won't sign off on that. I won't affirm that. I'm not going to. No. It makes people angry. And in fact, it's interesting if you think about it in the grand scheme of things. Like, it made Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar at this point is ruling, I think, a third of the planet, a third of the known planet from his giant golden city that's a wonder of the world. And he's super, super angry because 3 like 22-year-old Hebrew guys won't bow to his statue. But that's why I say the thing is not the thing. It's not just about bowing. It's like powerful people get very, very angry when we refuse to give in, when we take a stand, when we face the heat. And notice that's what he wanted to know. You know, is it true? And also notice that it turns into something else once again. It says, is it true that you refuse to serve my gods or worship the gold statue I have set up? See, there's something much bigger going on than bowing to a piece of metal. Like, I don't want you to forget, like, bowing to a piece of metal, like bending your body in a certain way toward a piece of metal. It's not really a big deal. But yet it's everything in this story. Like, they're going to get thrown into a furnace because of this. Because it's bigger than that, right? It's like, and that's the way it's always been in history. That's the way it still is. You know, think about like a salute or a bow, you know, or so many like simple actions we could take that mean so much more than that. And so King Chad, he likes it when I call him that. King Nebud. It's weird, you don't pronounce the Chad, but I like to think of him as a Chad. He seems like that. So he says, I'll give you one more chance. You know, he's being reasonable. And you notice also this is important, and I want to lay this out and remind us that, quite frankly, Nebuchadnezzar does not want to throw them in the furnace, right? Like, Nebuchadnezzar has invested, and we're going to talk about this next week. They have such an interesting story. He's invested a lot of time and money into sort of training them and preparing them, and they're actually quite important to his kingdom. They're actually really good leaders, and they're really smart, and they're really just amazing specimens. And so he's, you know, just as a businessman, as a king, as an emperor who's ruling a third of the planet, like, he's not interested in killing these guys. He's like, I just want you to bow. It's very, very important. Like, you know, so he's basically like, we're going to have a class and we're going to make sure. But then he gets to it, and this is what it's always about. When it finally comes down to, if you're in a real situation where you have to face the heat, this is really what it's always going to come down to. And that's why, even though this is sort of about like, oh, if I put my body in this certain position in front of a piece of metal, how does that matter? And I'm certain that there were more Jewish people in the audience than Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I'm betting that many of them found a way to sort of rationalize it in that way. Like, what's it matter? I don't believe this is a God. I believe in the real God. What does it matter if I bow to this? Like, everybody's doing it. What does it matter? Like, I don't want to get killed. How am I going to serve God and, you know, keep the lineage of Israel alive if I'm dead? Like, there's so many ways to rationalize this. But in the end, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came down to a point where they're like, well, this really is about whether we trust our God or not. Now, it's interesting because this is the book of Daniel, and Daniel has never mentioned this story, so my guess is Daniel's out of town, because we know that Daniel's not a guy who would have bowed, because when they told him not to pray, you've heard of Daniel and the lion's den, he went ahead and prayed, and they threw him in lions. And I do like the fact that these guys had interesting punishments, at least, right? Wouldn't life be a lot more interesting if we just went the Babylonian way? Like, no fine for you. You'll be thrown in a box of otters. Like, it's awesome that they have stuff like that, other than if you're thrown in. You get like a speeding ticket, and you have to put your head in a box of spiders. That's the Babylonian way. God, that would suck. But anyway, like, I don't think, obviously, Daniel bowed because he went to a den of lions for praying. Must have been out of town. But my guess is there were many other Jewish people there who did bow. And so that's sort of the end of a story for now. It ends like this today. And we'll go on next week. It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power. Their answer to what God can take you out of my power, I am all powerful, is like, oh, We know a God like that. And then they say the most important thing that you're going to hear today from the story. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, Your Majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you set up. See, there's two parts to this. Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. And here, if you're a Christian this morning, like, you got to have both parts of these if you're going to survive a situation like this, if you're going to actually face the heat. Just like on Wednesday night, we're teaching people, like, if you're knocked down, if a mob knocks you down and they start, here's how you have to get up. And it's not a natural way to get up. It's a special way. Like, and you have to learn this and you have to practice this. And sometimes I just, like, use it around the house just so I'll remember it, because I want that to be the way I get up so I can get away if I'm knocked down. And it's the same thing here. Like, you have to believe these two things and have decided in advance that God is able to save you. But even if he doesn't. That was the decision they made on that day. Even if he doesn't, we're not going to bow. We're not going to worship your idol. We're not going to join whatever this new thing you have. I like the band, by the way, but not going to join. Not going to happen. So that's one story. And that's a very old story. I have another story that happened this week. And it just popped up in my news yesterday. I was like, oh, well, that sounds familiar. This is Jonathan Isaac. It says, the headline from the Associated Press says, and I'll read the Associated Press story. It says, first NBA player not to kneel. No, he's the only NBA player not to kneel. It says, on Friday, while the national anthem was playing before the Orlando Magic Brooklyn Nets game, Magic forward, and that's the team. I thought it meant he was magical, and I was super excited. It's not. I'm not a basketball guy, but Magic forward, I thought he's wearing a shirt and he's magic. No, I'm reading the story. I'm sorry. It says Magic forward Jonathan Isaac, an ordained Christian minister, became the first player in the NBA this season to stand for the national anthem. He also did not wear a Black Lives Matter shirt as his teammates did. A person with knowledge of Isaac's decision said it was not a surprise to his teammates and that his choice was discussed ahead of time, the Associated Press reported. Now, if you want to hear why, you should Google him. DuckDuckGo him. Google, he'll disappear pretty quickly, but you should check him out because he tells why. And here's the thing. If this was about the flag, even though that's important, we would not be talking about it on Sunday morning. If this was about politics, we would definitely not be talking about it. But Jonathan said the reason why he did not kneel is because he's a follower of Christ. And because of his faith in Christ, he could not kneel when his teammates kneeled, and he could not wear the same shirt because he couldn't support an organization that was antithetical to his beliefs. And here's the thing. I don't follow basketball. But I'm really reminded that, wow, this feels a lot like the young man in the story. He's 23 years old, by the way. And he's sort of putting his whole career on the line, millions of dollars. And he certainly put his reputation on the line. And boy, is he taking some heat. So I think we should pray for him as a brother in Christ. But I pray that God protects him, and I pray that God rescues him, and I pray that, we never heard of it, or at least I hadn't. You're going to go, oh, he's great. I thought he was an actual magic guy. Like, I knew nothing about him, but, like, I pray that he is a great, like, voice to our generation. But even if God doesn't, I think that's the choice he had to have made, to walk out there in the wrong shirt, or the right shirt, but the wrong shirt on that day, and go, guys, I want to tell you in advance, I'm not joining, and here's why. And he went on to explain it to the press. You can Google him, and you'll hear his story. He said, because of the gospel. But see, that's the decision you have to make this morning. Like, we're going to talk about sort of like the mechanics of how to get back up when you're knocked down. And we're going to talk about like how to face the heat. And, oh man, I can't wait for the third week. We're talking about how Jesus does show up. It's such a great story. And I think it's so true. And I think Jesus will show up for him whether or not he loses his job. But see, Jonathan had to make a decision, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego made a decision that even if he doesn't. And that's what we can do this morning. I want the band to come back up here, and I'm going to pray with you. But here's what you have to decide this morning. What is it that you go, hey, no matter what, like even if I lose my job, even if I lose my reputation, even if everyone hates me, and make that list small. Don't make it big. Don't make it like, that's the problem. Like sometimes we go, well, I'm just going to take a stand on this. No. You should be very careful. We just did a month talking about don't cast your pearls before swine. Don't go out of your way to make this. But there's like a few things you have to go, I am willing to lose everything because this is not right. And I believe God. And I know that God can rescue me if I have to take a stand on this. But even if he doesn't, I will stand. And so you have to decide that beforehand. It's kind of like you don't know when you're going to be attacked, like physically. And so that's why we train here on Wednesday night. Like we want to be ready, and we have to have that sort of baked into our responses. But it's the same thing in this case. Like you don't know when you'll have to take a stand. It might be never. It might be tomorrow at work. Somebody might go to work and they go, hey, here's our new policy and here's what you have to do now. And you just go, that's wrong. I can't do that now. And so we have to decide now, like, what is it that you say, even if God doesn't rescue me, I will stand. I will face the heat. So I want to pray with you. Dear God, first of all, we pray for our brother Jonathan. I know he's going through a difficult time right now. But thank you for his example that because of Christ, he decided that he would stand against everyone in his friend group, in his team, in his league, and deal with a national spotlight. And God, I pray that we would be more like that. And God, I pray honestly that no one here has to go through anything difficult this week, that maybe no one will have to face the heat. But God, I pray that if they do, they'll be ready. And God, I pray that this will be a place where we train people to be ready, to refuse to give in and give up and kneel down when the time comes. God, I pray that we would come through life and keep our faith and finish well and wind up in eternity with you because we never denied you. God, I pray for every person in this room. And I pray for everyone outside of this room that is watching this live and will see this later this week. God, we can't necessarily be there for them, and we can't make this decision for them. But God, I pray through the power of your Holy Spirit that you will help them to just sort of grind this into their soul and make a decision now to face the heat when the time comes. And God, will depend on your Spirit. In your name we pray. Amen.
Well, sometimes my life just don't make sense at all. When the mountains look so big and my faith just seems so small. So hold me, Jesus, 'cause I'm shaking like a leaf. You have been King of my glory. Won't you be my Prince of Peace? And I wake up in the night and feel the dark. It's so hot inside my soul. Swear there must be blisters on my heart. So hold me, Jesus, 'cause I'm shaking like a leaf. You have been King of my glory. Won't you be my Prince of Peace? Surrender don't come natural to me. I'd rather fight you for something I don't really want than take what you give that I need. And I beat my head against so many walls, falling down, falling on my knees. And the Salvation Army band's playing this hymn, and your grace rings out so deep, makes my resistance seem so thin. So hold me, Jesus, 'cause I'm shaking like a leaf. You have been King of my glory. Won't you be my Prince of Peace? I'm singing, hold me, Jesus, 'cause I'm shaking like a leaf. You have been King of my glory. Won't you be my Prince of Peace? Thank you.
All right, guys. I wanted to do two things here in the outro. One, the app, we're recommitting to the Action Church app, so there's a lot of events and stuff in there. So if you're looking for information on the events that are coming up, the stuff we talked about earlier, it's all there on the app. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in September, we're actually going to be doing baptism. So I just wanted to plant that seed for anybody who would be considering baptism. That's something we're going to do. And there's going to be a lot more details about that throughout time. But I just wanted to plant that seed this morning. Have a great week.